Welcome to the Lightforge. This is Abwigda.
This is Merps. Hope you guys are doing well. We got a lot to talk about today because a lot has happened this week. I can't believe, and you mentioned this 5 minutes before as we were prepping for the podcast, that the expansion wasn't even out last week. It seems so long that we've had it, and so much has happened that it was actually shocking to me. It was really a surprise. So let's just talk about all of this stuff in a little bit. Because first, I want to talk about something that I did this. It was on me. Something this week that might be of interest to everyone listening to this podcast, which is I came out with a 1 hour long, and that's very impressive. All right. I had to parse it down from like 3
I was about to say, you hear 1 hour long, and if you don't know it, you're thinking, oh, you spent a lot of time on this, put a lot of effort in it to make it all like 1 hour long. Whereas in reality, it's like, it probably had it 4 hours long, and you spent a lot of time and effort trying to squish it into a 1 hour long segment.
I know. I made a 5-part video series, and you can find that on our YouTube. Just the channel is Grinning Goat. About how to get good in the arena. I go through what I consider to be the most important things and the best things for you to digest in 1 hour's worth of time. I think it's got a lot of good stuff in there for beginners as well as intermediate to fairly advanced players. So the reason I made this is just because starting arena is pretty tough nowadays. This is not like when we started, in which it was fairly easy to go infinite as long as you knew some basic mechanics, you knew things that other people didn't know, which is like trade, play around certain cards. That was
knowing to trade is enough to be a 4-win player back in the day.
Yeah, that was enough. So it's really tough right now. And that's a shame because we want more players in, and the players that are entering and want to get better, it's really hard because if you go to Arena HS, if you look at the Blizzard forums, the prevalent advice is watch streamers and play more. Play more is obvious. No matter what you do, you got to play more. But watch streamers, it's helpful, but they don't tell you, number one, how to watch streams, in which you don't just watch it and then also put on Netflix and also play with your cat at the same time. What you should do is actively watch, and then you're also jumping in.
Like before we're talking about the point you're jumping in, just like to watch streamers, it's something I haven't heard people talk about for a while. And it's something that was super basic back in the day, like 4 years ago, when it was like how to get good in the arena. And that's like, this is how you watch streams. You watch it, you hit the pause button whenever the card is drawn, you make your move, then you hit the play button, and then you see what the streamer does. And if it does not match yours, then you probably did something wrong. If it does not match yours, and the streamer didn't even talk, like you can get a streamer, you know, like you can watch us, you can watch Shady, like someone that like, there's a whole bunch more out there that like explains their moves like turn by turn, and not just like, you know, talks about like random stuff, because there's different types of streams, right? So you get an educational stream, and then you just do that, and it's like painful, and it takes like forever to watch it. But you go through that for like a few games with each type of deck, and you understand where you're going wrong, and more importantly, how frequently you're going wrong. So most people jump in and they're like, oh, I probably make a couple decisions differently than streamers. Like, I don't know why I'm like, you know, that's probably why I'm like a 5-win player or like a 4-win player and not like a 7-8-win player. And then you actually sit down and you do this, and you're like, oh, I'm making like 33% decisions differently than the streamers past like the first like 3 turns. Like,
and those are the important decisions.
Yeah. Like, because the wins come from somewhere. If you like do a decision differently than a streamer, 9 times out of 10, nothing's gonna happen. You're gonna end up on the same path to victory or to defeat. So those decisions have to stack up a lot to get to a difference where the streamer is getting like twice your win rate or like 1.5 times your win rate. Anyway, just wanted to throw that out there. Like, that's how you watch streams, not just like, I mean, you can watch streams for fun, right? But if you want to like sit there and get good, you have to watch it like that. press the pause button before the streamer says anything.
I think that's a good point. And it's a point that I also try to make in the videos as well. But this series, I think what I really wanted it to be was if someone just enters the arena and they want help, they want to know how to get better, I want them to have a good foundation, and I want them to recognize what is most important. Because I see a lot of people place a lot of importance on drafting, on understanding the meta before they even really know how to play the game and how to think about the game. So that's the most important part. And if you don't have an hour, if you only have 20 minutes, all right, I would say out of the 5-part series, definitely watch part 3 where I go into turn planning. This is going to be the foundation for your Hearthstone success. I say this in the videos as well, but even though this comes from my own mind, other top players and top streamers, they might not ask the questions in the same way. They might not even know they're asking these questions, but literally every single successful Hearthstone player, constructed or arena, asks these questions in one way or another. They are that important, and they are that sort of game changing and shaping. So that's going to be my plug. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about everything there is in the videos, because you could just go watch the videos.
Go watch the video. It's on our YouTube. And also on our YouTube is our 12-win series, where you can just load something up from any meta that you've played in and just like do the pause play thing. Any of the 12-win videos. So one, they got an 11 and 12 win, so we didn't screw up that badly in that particular run, at least. And 2, we're generally good players. And 3, the vast majority of the times we're explaining our plays.
Yeah, definitely. So,
and if we're not explaining our plays, feel free to like ask about it, just like in the comments. Someone will probably answer you, likely us, if other people don't answer it.
Yeah, very true. All right. So that's it, guys. Hope you enjoy it. And one last disclaimer: if you're listening to this podcast, a lot of you want meta advice and know how to succeed in the meta. Do not go to the video series if that is literally all that you want. Keep on listening to this podcast, because I tried to make that series timeless. So there is no discussion of the current meta or how to succeed in the current meta, because all I want to do is give you the fundamental tools for success.
And that's the difference, right? Like this podcast, we talk about, like we do like deep fried meta now and then. We talk about a concept, like how do 2-drops affect the game? How do hard removals affect the game? When do you hold a board clear versus play? Like what does stealth do? Like we'll talk about a topic now and then, but it's really, those are just like quick hits. Like if all you're doing is listening to that, you're going to get better at it. But really, they assume that you have some kind of foundation of good arena play that you can like just think deeply on one issue, or like draw upon your experience while piecing it together with what we're saying about one topic. If we're talking about like 2-drops and you're like, oh, this is all new to me, that actually probably wasn't that helpful. Like you should have gone back and watched something fundamental like what Merps is saying. If we're talking about 2-drops and you're like, I know like 2/3, 3/4 of this, and the other quarter is what I'm like getting, and that's an interesting way to think about it, then that's what those are for. And obviously we're going to talk about all the meta as it's happening, because a lot of our listeners are fellow top players in the arena, or like extreme vets that know all the other stuff. So if you're listening to this, or whatever, and you want to be at a place where all of this like comes in and you're able to use it immediately, you need a foundation. And Merps made this video series because there's not a great place, and there just hasn't been since the very beginning, a place with all this arena knowledge. Like if you Google back in the classic days, there were plenty of articles written in the first year, maybe year and a half after Hearthstone came out, / when Hearthstone was in beta, that was about a lot of the fundamentals.
And one of the things that I don't think was really presented anywhere, like just period, was an emphasis on this thought process. Other guides would teach you, it's like, okay, here is how to trade. Okay, and like they would emphasize the importance of trading. They would emphasize the importance of stats, the importance of this, the importance of that. They would never really explain how you ascribe the necessary importance to what they tell you to do. And that's the most important, because you can explain, it's like, this is a tool that you have to use. This is that. And you're just like, okay, but what is the recipe? How do I actually, what's the process? Like, I can appreciate, like, if we're actually talking about a recipe, I can appreciate you saying this ingredient is valuable, that ingredient is valuable. Make sure you don't cook for too long, do all of these things. But what order do you put it in? And how do you like construct this this actual dish, right? Like, what do you put in first? What do you do? Like, no one really explains that. They just tell you how important individual ingredients are.
It's so much easier to be like, if you have a 3-4 and you hit into a 2-3, then you have a 3-2 left, and they have nothing, and that's like better than if they had a 2-3 and you have a 3-4. So you should like do that unless you desperately need face damage. That was an easy statement to make. It's not that challenging to think about, even if you don't know that much about Hearthstone, and you do learn a lot from it if you knew nothing about like how these card games work. But it only gets you so far nowadays, which I don't know. And it's gotta be so weird if you never played a card game before, and then you like jump into Hearthstone now in the arena. It's just like people are good. And I don't mean like people at 8 wins are good. Like people at 0-0 are pretty good. All right. So that's on our YouTube. So definitely check that out. We just don't and we can't talk about all that stuff here that frequently.
This is why I made a video.
They're very important.
Yeah. Like, if I had to explain it here as well, what the hell was the point of making the video? Go watch the video.
Okay.
All right, that's it.
With that being said, let's get back to the current meta. New expansion came out. It's an adventure. It only has 30-something cards. But just in case... Oh, and there's no offering bonus. I don't know if this has been 100% confirmed yet. But from the feels of it, and for what everyone's telling me, there's no offering bonus to the new cards. There's only an offering bonus to Descent of Dragons, which is the same as it always was. This is what I hear from it. We don't have stats showing you one way or the other. HS Replay doesn't have enough stats yet. The sample sizes are like still pretty small because no one's playing Arena. So right now, just from personal experience, you don't see these cards that often in the meta. All these new cards. They're really, really good, though. So just to give you an idea of how good they are, out of the 30-something cards, maybe like 25 are class cards that are non-legendary. I think that's a good thing. Maybe even less than 25 are class cards that are non-legendary. And of those, I'm going to say like 13 of them. I can't really count that fast. But roughly 13 of them. 15 of them? How long is my list? 9 plus 15 of them. 15 of these cards out of the possible like 25-ish non-legendary class cards that were released. 15 of them are in like the top 15 cards of each class. Like by win rate on HS Replay. So, not just on our tier list, but also by win rate. And a whopping 5 of them are the best cards of their class. Performance-wise. That means they're having higher win rates than any other class. And then there's a few more on like 3 and 4. So it's a very impactful expansion in terms of if you get that card, it's a super huge impact. If you don't get the card, I mean, obviously it's not a big impact, but if you're like playing in the arena and you're looking to like play around these cards, there's actually not that many of them floating around compared to Descent of Dragons cards, despite how great they are. Just an offering odds thing. So if you're looking at how the meta has changed, the meta's changed a lot on the class balance side, but in the big picture, the meta has not changed that much. Mostly because these cards don't have an offering bonus, and there are so few of them, even though they are game-changing when they do get played. So, in some sense, it's even more swingy, right? The game has gotten even more swingy, but they're just diluting Descent of Dragons, which was even more swingy. So, I don't know. I think overall, I don't feel like the meta is particularly better or worse than it was before these cards came in, and these cards don't have a huge impact on the meta overall. But in particular games, they are definitely game-changing.
I think that's fair. Yeah, the power impact has definitely been felt. Like, as you were talking about, it introduced a lot of powerful cards. We'll definitely talk about some of them pretty soon.
Yeah, we'll talk about every single one of these 15 super powerful cards. Some not a lot, because we've talked about them before. But some of them were... Yeah, so if you don't know, if you were listening to the previous Lightforges, we did not know until freaking Monday, like, afternoon, what they were like what the other cards are. So we got a card dump Monday afternoon. On Tuesday, the expansion launches. And on Tuesday, when the expansion launched, everybody thought this was going to be like every other adventure, where I know memories are short because people kept trying to correct me on Reddit when I talked about this. And I'm like, no, that's not how it is. Traditionally, when an adventure launches, now an adventure hasn't launched since, what is it?
It's been a while.
It's been a long time, right? LE, Karazhan, I think maybe was the last expansion. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
But it would be, you launch 1 week set of cards with constructed, and those are in the meta. Then the next week, the next week's cards launch. Then the next week's cards launch. And then finally, in the 4th week, you now have access to all the cards, following constructed step for step. This time, I don't know if they meant to do it, because it was not in any of the blog posts or any official communication from Blizzard. It was just all in the arena on day 1.
Yeah, this was not something intentional. Like, they never mentioned, it's like, by the way, if you want to play with the new cards, head over to the arena. No, this is never... They never did that.
If it was intentional, it was not communicated to, like, anybody that made it out to the public.
Yeah.
But whatever. Yeah. This is what I mean by, like, you know, not all bugs are bad, right? Sometimes an oversight is good. I don't know if I, like, in all seriousness, like, the offering bonus things, I don't even know if I want the offering bonus to be switched. These cards are kind of ridiculous.
I know, right?
So, so it's probably a bug that they didn't put the offering bonus here and kept it on Descent of Dragons. It's really probably a bug that all of these are available in the arena right now because they're available in the game, rather than being stopped like they used to be. But still, all of those, I think, work together to make this a better meta right now. One more bug in the arena that I thought would get more traction, but really didn't. And that's that if you get rewards in the arena and you get a golden card, you can get cards like in your collection, totally playable for constructed. You can get cards that are not available in constructed yet. Like, you get week 2 cards right now, week 3, week 4. You can continue getting week 3 and week 4 cards even next week when we go into week 2. So I figured there would be like a bigger uproar about this, but instead it was like the post that mentioned it on the main Hearthstone subreddit didn't even get as many upvotes as like our very tame, like, we updated the Lightforge tier list post. So yeah. And if you were checking out the Lightforge tier list on day 1, you know we didn't have the new scores up because we didn't know what cards were there. We didn't know what the meta was. We didn't know anything. But we got them up pretty quickly, and I think they were up there within like 36 hours, like maybe 48 at most. So yeah, that's what's been that's what's happened this week.
Yep. All right. Is it time to talk about the new cards?
Yes, let's talk about the new cards. Let's start with neutrals, and then we'll hit each class up one by one.
Okay.
Sound good?
You start us off.
Okay. So in neutrals, it's a bunch of... We're not going to talk about bad cards. So if there's a card you want to hear about that we haven't talked about, it's because we think it's bad. Or at least like worse than a Yeti.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be bad.
Just like worse than a Yeti. Like, I don't want to talk about Boom Pistol Bully, but I'm going to, just as an example of a card that we won't talk about from here on out. It's an epic neutral card, 5 mana, 5/5, Battlecry. Enemy Battlecry cards cost 5 more next turn.
It's actually pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's better than a Yeti by 1 point. For a 5 mana, 5/5, that's pretty good. There's a decent amount of Battlecry cards. You get to stop them for a turn. There used to be a legendary card called Lotheb.
Lotheb. Oh my god.
That guy. He did the same thing for spells. In Arena, Battlecry cards are about as frequent as spells. I don't think there's a meaningful difference between the two. So yeah, it's good and everything, but it's not that much better than a Yeti, and we won't talk about anything like that. Fortunately, most of this set is ridiculously good. So the best card in neutral that came out this set is only a 128. A 128 is like an evasive Feywing. It is not like a Faceless Corruptor, which is a 159. It is not like an evasive Worm, which is a 167, or a Twin Tyrant 166. And yes, if you're wondering, like no one's brought this up to us, and I feel like this should have been like the biggest deal, but I guess people don't feel that strongly about it. Evasive Worm has been higher than Twin Tyrant, not at launch, but like since we adjusted the odds, and since what's the thing, Poacher. Since Poacher was removed from the meta, and we adjusted the odds to reflect like what the meta is, Evasive Worm has been rated higher than Twin Tyrant by like a couple points, nothing meaningful, on our tier list. And I just thought we get so much pushback on it, and we haven't. But that's a discussion for another day. But it basically comes down to turn 6 or turn 8.
You just don't see it as often, and it's not as frustrating, right? Mm-hmm. Like people see Evasive Feywing, and they're like, okay, that sucks. But they move on from it mentally a lot better than Tyrant. It's just part of human nature, I think. And also how Tyrant, a lot of the times, is just, it deals that perfect or almost perfect damage, right?
It has a bigger swing. It could take out 8 damage worth of stuff instead of like potentially 8 damage worth of stuff. Right? Like, it's using up maybe 1 extra mana to take out 8 damage worth of stuff. Evasive Feywing is using, like, 2 mana to take out 5 damage worth of stuff. It's not the same swing. Like, Tyrant is way bigger of a swing.
Yeah. So that's sort of how it is. Okay. And I think a lot of people would agree. It's like, people are, if they disagree, they're confusing the times in which it's like, no one denies that when you are able to get Tyrant down comfortably and it hits, it's like so much better than Feywing.
Oh, sorry, you mean Worm, Evasive Worm.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Worm.
Evasive Feywing's the 4 mana 5/4 evasive. Evasive Worm
it is
the
already
6 mana 5/3 evasive Divine Shield Rush.
So that's the thing. It's like if we're talking about, and I think some people confuse, like, no, it's so much better. I'm like, yes, what you mean is if you're able to play, yeah, exactly. When you play it, is Tyrant that much better? Yes. Mm-hmm. No one denies that, but it's like
6 mana versus 8 mana.
6 mana versus 8 mana, playability, awkwardness. But when you're able to play it, and when you want to play Tyrant, that means Tyrant is like super good, pretty good.
I mean, we've all done it, right? We've all just played a Tyrant and it like killed a 2/2 and we were happy. Right? Oh my gosh. Like, we've all done it. That's how good Tyrant is. So when it really hits, it's like game changing. Evasive Worm probably isn't that game changing, but hey, at 8 mana, you're like, the game goes pretty fast these days for the fast classes. Because one thing that hasn't changed is there hasn't been like that much healing that's gotten added to the game. Although the changing of the construction, okay, so I'll talk about this a little now before we get into the classes. The HS Replay, the number 1 class right now is Priest. Priest was always pretty good after the micro adjust, but you'll see why. Priest got some excellent freaking cards in this, and has been pushing it over the edge over Warlock.
I've said this many times. I think I even said it last week. Yep. Whenever there is a meta in which Priest is number 1, that is not going to be a fun meta. Like, that just can't be a fun meta, because your average player doesn't do well with Priest. If Priest is number 1, that means they have so much overpowered cards, and those are not going to be tempo cards, okay? Those are going to be, and we'll go through this in a little bit, because I have like the HS Replay top, like, most seen cards for Priest, and these are the scummiest cards, okay?
Like, and Priest these days, you start off a draft and you're just like, oh, I get offered 2 removal and a minion every turn. Nice. For your 30 picks.
I mean, I'll just tell you guys, the most common card in Priest decks is Mind Control. So what does this mean? Number 1, they have a lot of Mind Controls. And number 2, they're getting away with it. If their most common card is Mind Control, that means they're like, their cards allow them to survive with their most common card being Mind Control, number 1. And number 2, the meta is such that they, like, your average player is not punishing them enough for being this greedy.
Yeah.
By the way, the number 2 card is Holy Nova. So like, this is just, it's disgusting. All right. It is absolutely disgusting.
All right, so Priest is number 1 right now on HS Replay stats, which makes a lot of people very upset. But what it means is you now have a class that can heal itself, right, at the very top. Although the way most priests play, you're actually pretty good going aggro, but it's still kind of an asterisk. Druid is number 3 right now. Druid was at the very bottom, or close to the very bottom, after the micro adjust, but it got 2 really nice cards. It's bringing it up to number 3 right now. And one of those cards is a gigantic, ridiculous taunt that can't be targeted. So, turn 7 too. And then you have Shaman, which got a ridiculous taunt on turn 10. Also being Shaman, they can summon totems, so they're like sort of healing a little bit. And Warrior's 5 now, which actually dropped a little bit. But you're basically getting, like, the class composition has changed a bit so that the game is a little less the like, oh, if I just keep hitting you to the face, I am eventually going to get to the point where I could just like put out minions that hit you to the face and we're fine. There's still not like that much heal that your like pyroblast strategies and things like that are probably going to work. And it is a priest meta in the sense that priests are winning a lot, but you don't see that many priests. Like, I don't think it's like caught on yet. There's always like this gap between when a class gets really good and when everyone starts playing it, and we're not like quite there yet. So it's only going to get worse in terms of the meta. But yeah. Anyway, so when I say like this is a meta that's like largely unchanged, it got like a little bit slower, I guess, overall. But fast strategies still work generally better than slow strategies, unless you really have that card advantage to beef it up with these new cards. A lot of these new cards have like either insane card advantage or like unlimited card advantage. Okay, anyway, setting all that aside, remember, these are not large movements. These are small movements. And we're talking about like, oh my god, Priest is number 1. It's number 1 at 53.7% win rate. That's not that bad. Like, we're fine. Like, there does not need to be micro adjusts based on the win rates alone, at least. Okay.
You know what's holding it down? The 50% win rate of priests when they go up against another priest.
There's not that many priests in the meta. Okay. So you have in the neutrals, we talked about Boom Pistol Bully, which is epic. We're going to talk about Escaped Mana Saber next, which is another epic card. So you're not going to see it a lot. These are cards that are not going to be seen a lot. Remember, no offering bonus and an epic. Escape Mana Saber, people seem to really like. We have it rated at a 115, which makes it worse than a Hippogriff. Hippogriffs are pretty good. No one's like jumping up and down about how great Hippogriffs are. But Escape Mana Sabers, people are really, really high on. I've faced down a number of Escape Mana Sabers. I've used one myself. I do not find it particularly impressive either against me or when I was using it. This is not a super new kind of like thing that's happening in terms of the ability. We have precedence here with Pint-Sized Summoner. This one obviously has stealth, so it's a little bit different. But generally, I think it stays in the same range.
Okay. This is one I know you said we'll be keeping an eye on.
Yeah, we're keeping an eye on it, but when we first released it, I was like, it seems kind of low. That's because we released it at 100, and that's because I knew there was probably a bug, but we needed to get all the cards out like immediately because Blizzard kind of dropped it all on us last minute. But within like 2 days, I think we fixed the bug, and so it's a 115. It's not going to move again, at least not for a while. Because this is okay. So how do you use this card, right? Let's break this card down. This card, I think it's worth examining a bit. A 4-mana 3/5 taunt, 3/5 stealth is a okay card, right? We have a similar card that exists in this game. God, where is it? Why am I not finding it? The one that gives armor, what's it called again?
What?
3/5 stealth that gives armor. Halftime Scavenger. Thank you, chat.
Oh, that's what you were talking about.
Yeah. So a halftime scavenger, that has an ability to overkill, gain 3 armor, which is not like the best ability, but it's something. That's a 96 with the ability overall. And so this one is like 20 points higher. The Escape Mana Saber. So you have to think that this ability is ridiculously good to have it much higher. Like 20 points is a lot of movement for a 4-mana card.
And some people might.
Yeah. So let's break down what this ability actually does, right? If you keep this thing stealth, you're not using its stats. So it's basically missing attacks. Right. That's generally bad. And then you can control when you get your 1 mana ramp and or give it a better situation so it has a higher chance of surviving, so you can ramp mana later on as well. If you play it immediately, on turn 4, you can attack on turn 5, which ramps you to turn 6. Right? And being a 4-mana 3/5, depending on what your 6-mana card is, it's a very high likelihood that this is only going to live for 1 turn, even if your opponent doesn't have much initiative. Just because you've used, you spent 4 mana on the 3/5 that you've unstealthed the next turn. So it's almost guaranteed to live for 1 turn, but then it only ramps you once. And it's not an early game ramp. It's like a mid-game ramp at best. If this comes out later in the game, I think on average, this card will get played on turn 8 or 9 or something. 8. I think it's turn 8 is the average turn that this card gets played on. And then it just gives you, it doesn't ramp you at that point, right? It just gives you an extra mana. So those are the 2 options you can do. You can either have it be missing attack, so you can actually ramp into something that you really want to ramp into, and in the meantime be taking face damage and not controlling the board. Or you can use it the next turn if the situation looks decent, and then it will likely get killed, but you got a mana out of it and potentially a ramp. So it's kind of controllable, but it's uncontrollable what cards you have in your hand that you need to ramp to. Like, you don't get to set it up or anything, right? Because you need it out immediately. Right. So it's just, the efficiency level is, like, when it hits, this is where we're talking about swings, right? Like, you play the Mana Saber on 4 or 5, and then you either leave it stealth for a turn or attack immediately if you played it on turn 5. It attacks on turn 6. It gets to turn 7. You put out your Evasive Worm. Oh my god, you win the game. What are the odds you have an Evasive Worm in your hand? Almost 0. Right? Like, we're talking 5% of all games will that happen. And there's not really an equivalent to Evasive Worm. In neutral, at least. So there's a few other targets. You're going to get this happen a few times, but it just doesn't add up. Like, all that the algorithm is going to think about much better than a human player. And yeah, it's like, to the extent that 115 is not the correct number, the correct number is no higher than 120. That's something that I could say with a lot of confidence.
All right. Yeah, this is interesting just because I know that this is a card that I think fairly, people have fairly strong feelings about. They either are just yeah, I don't see what's so special about this card, I played with it, or some individuals, particularly it's really just washed up streamers that think about this.
Right now, Drez is in our channel spamming how great this card is.
Yeah, it's really just washed up streamers, really washed up streamers, but they really like this card. And we'll see. It'll be interesting to see, because I don't have that much experience with the card, so I definitely have to play with it.
Yeah. And I think what's telling about the card is that, one, it's a card that if you have it, you just kind of play it at some point, right? You're not saving it for anything in particular, because it gets worse and worse in terms of the ramp. And I faced down a number of Escape Mana Sabers because people like it and they draft it really high. And I have been screwed by it literally 0 times. So the percent chance that I'm being screwed by this card is low, right? It's literally 0. I mean, I haven't seen it that many times. It's a statistically significant sample. But if I'm facing it down 4 times, I don't get screwed once, and then I had it in my deck once, and I didn't get anything out of it, really. I don't know, like your game winning opportunities are probably what the algorithm thinks it is, which is like somewhere around like a number that's maybe like 10% of the time, assuming you get it on turn 4, which is an even lower percent of times. So overall, you have less than a 5% chance of this card winning you the game. Now, this is like people like poachers too, right? Again, you have like poacher has a much higher chance of winning the game in this meta than 5%. Mana Saber, but poacher was also rated, I think, higher than Escape Mana Saber. And you're less like, it's less about when you draw it, right? Like it stays really, really good in the late game too, whereas Escape Mana Saber kind of drops down. But it's the same kind of idea. We never rate those cards as high as I think people feel they are, because they have a really big impact when they work. They're just not going to work that often.
Should we talk about some of the actual game-changing cards? And
not just Mana Saber. Well, that's what people would argue, that Escape Mana Saber is a game-changing card. And I don't know about that. Okay, we should talk about the last neutral card, though. Hailbringer is the common neutral card. It is the best neutral card. We started talking about it before we moved back to Mana Saber. And Hailbringer is 128, which, again, puts it into the territory of like an Argent Horse Rider or an Evasive Feywing.
Pretty good.
Argent Commander. Like, not these days, these cards are not considered premium anymore, right? Like, they're just, like, good cards.
Sad Argent Commander. Oh, I'm sorry.
Back in the day, he was king. I mean, okay, right. So that's what it is. It's a 5 mana 3/4 summon 2/1/1 ice shards that freeze. So the ice shards are like little water elementals. It's basically missing a stat to get the freeze effects, but the freeze effects are really good and they're repetitive.
Double freeze is good.
Yeah, they're repetitive. So like you can like lock out a rogue. Not that rogues are popular these days, but there's just a lot of utility to this card, and it's a very interesting card. I like its design. It's in the meta now. Use it, play it. You probably won't hate it too much. It's not that powerful by today's standards. But yeah, that's the new guy that you'll see around. Okay, now you can talk about the really super powerful cards. Let's start with Druid. Or do you want to start somewhere else? All right, start wherever you want to start.
You want to start with the card that we have. No, I want to start off with the card that we had as the highest.
Okay. We're starting with the number 1 card.
Starting with the number 1 card. The oppressively good, rage-inducing, yet kind of unsexy card, which is in Warlock, all right? And it is Twisted Knowledge. Common spell, 2 mana. Discover 2 Warlock cards.
Yeah, it's a 188. When it first came out like that, I was like, hey, technical director who makes all the things in the algorithm possible, are you sure you didn't mess up an input? I know we've had cards like these, so I trust that the algorithm is getting this right. But, like, please check, 1, that it's being properly inputted in Warlock, that it's using Warlock cards, and 2, that it is still somehow a 188, which makes it the number 1 Warlock card right now, by the way. That includes legendaries, because the good legendaries aren't it. And it came back, and it was like, yep, that's just what it is. And I was like, all right, I guess we go with it. And it seems like people's experience back it up. HS Replay pretty much backs it up. It's number 3 in HS Replay.
I've gotten beat by it way too many times. Because if you just look at the available pool, there are so many answers that are available for Warlocks. You're not just getting like Boulder Fist Ogres. You're getting initiative cards.
You're getting AOE, hard removals. You're getting AOEs. Like
the chances of you not getting removal in your 6 picks is like non-existent.
Very tiny.
Non-existent. You are going to get, and then of course you can get Ghoul, like Jaraxxus, Gul'dan, these big bombs as well. So as Warlock, your deck may seem pretty small, but if you have 1 or 2 Twisted Knowledges in there, your deck suddenly becomes not only gigantic, but gigantic with initiative, with removal, and just from this 1 card. So yeah, it is that good. It's gotten to a point where you can't say this about too many cards, but in the draft, literally doesn't matter. It's like if you see a Twisted Knowledge, you pick a Twisted Knowledge. That's pretty much it.
I mean, sometimes it matters.
Nope. You can even use it whenever as well.
Like, if you need a board clear and you're getting offered a Hellfire or a Defile, like, take that over a Twisted Knowledge. But it's usually you take a Twisted Knowledge.
Yeah. I can maybe see Defile over it. I can see Defile over it.
I'll take a Hellfire over if I need a board clear.
If you needed it. But yeah, it is really just that good. So yeah, that's the best card.
That's the best card. That's right, and it's by like more than 10 points too. So it's not like it edged something out. Not a lot of cards are at a 188. Just like Twin Tyrant's not at a 188. Yeah, especially in Warlock. Warlocks tend to not have the like 200 point cards. I think Defile at one point was 200. It's now 182. But
oh no.
Yeah, right. Okay. So that's Warlock. There's also the other card in Warlock that's a 144, really good. It's epic though, you don't see it a lot. Chaos Gazer. It's a 4/3 that makes your opponent, it corrupts one of the cards in your opponent's hand, so they have to play it the next turn or it goes away. It has to be a playable card. And I don't know, it's definitely made my opponents do some awkward things when I've had it and played it. So I trust that the 144 rating is about right. It's not like the best card though, because there's a large percentage of times where it does literally nothing because your opponent has like nothing in their hands, or it's the card that they were going to play anyway because it's like their 3-drop.
It's very, very good on turn 3 because the chances of you hitting a card that they either don't want to play or they can't play is pretty high on turn 3.
Yep.
But after that, it's
Yeah, like this didn't actually happen, but when I was playing Chaos Gazer on turn 3, like chat made this point, and I was like, I don't really think about that, but it is true because he paused a lot, and it just turned out that he like had some 1 mana like pre-spell that he needed to play, or got lost or something, and he was like struggling to like curve out or do that or whatever. But like chat was like, yeah, if he has a Shadow Word Death or a Shadow Word Pain, it's gone. Because all you have is a 4-attack thing, and that's not like a rare thing to happen these days. Because like when you're facing priests, they get offered a lot of pains and deaths. So yeah. Also, priests have other really conditional things. It's really just a very good card against priests, which is nice because priests are very powerful right now.
I mean, look, their most common card is Mind Control. So if you had to like place a bet on something, well, you wouldn't because the mulligan they wouldn't have Mind Control. Hopefully, God. But it's like it's not out of the question for you to get rid of a Mind Control by doing that.
Well, but you have to play it later because it's only playable cards, so you have to play this on like turn 10. Right, with like medium size or like small stuff on the board, and then they're like, crap, I got a Mind Control of 4/4. But yeah, and Warlocks in general, if you remember this, Warlocks are always good against priests because they have unlimited card advantage if they don't get pressured, and priests can't pressure. So it's Twisted Knowledge too. On top of that, it makes for a good time to be a Warlock as well. Okay. So now what I want to talk about is frickin' Druid. I love these 2 cards that came in. These are not as good as Emerald Explorer, not as good as Embiggen, but like right there. Emerald Explorer is a 174, Embiggen's a 175. Those are really good cards. Wing Guardian's a 171. Rising Winds is a 161. They are right there on top. Wing Guardian is a 7-mana 6/8 taunt reborn, cannot be targeted by spells or hero powers, a beast. So that is a 6/8 effectively with a reverse divine shield and taunt. It's insanely good. It stops everything. Not everything, but it's going to be like a 3-for-1 most times. And you can just play it also. It doesn't like become worse if you play it in a bad situation. It's just a very flexible good things. And it reinforces the Druid identity of being able to throw big taunts out, right? So it's good, it's powerful. It's the #1 win rate card right now on HS Replay for Druid. And the next card, Rising Winds, is I think #3 for Druid in terms of win rate. And this is a card that's also silly if you think about it. It's the 2-mana twin spell that has a choose one, draw a card, or summon a 3/2 eagle. From my experience playing it and watching other people play with it, you're almost always going to pick a 3/2 Eagle because you just need like the tempo, or it's a 2-drop on 2, right? But in the times when you're desperately searching your deck for something, or it's just really late in the game and you care more about card advantage, you do take the draw a card option, like less than a quarter of the time, but you do take it some of the time. And even if you don't take it, it's a raptor that puts another raptor in your hand. That's ridiculous. And the win rates back it up.
Yeah, it's not a card that's very hard to use. Like, you'll pretty much know the situation. Like, whenever you need to put down a 3/2 or you want to draw a card. And we talked about this last week. It's not a sexy card, so I think some people might be surprised at the very high rating. Yeah. But I think if you played with it, you will understand pretty soon after you played with it a few times exactly why it's rated that high. It's just that good. Options are really, really, really good. Mm-hmm. And from what I've seen in my own few games, and also from watching streamers. Actually, it's just one stream. It's Dreads. It's the watching stream I was talking about. He's like the only guy. He's like the the high school QB who wants to relive his glory days and is coming back to high school as like a 30-year-old. Anyways, in all seriousness, but it seemed like Dreads was a little bit reluctant to sort of accept the high rating for that card as well, and he at least somewhat agreed.
Well, it depends on what you're like looking at, right? If you're looking at it the way it's presented, you're like twin spell, 3/2, something else. It kind of like clouds what it actually is. What it actually is a 3/2 that gets you another card potentially, right? Or it's a 2-drop on curve, or it's a 4-drop on curve. Or like, and if it's a 2-drop on curve, it gives you another card or another like curve filler for 2 mana if you ever run out of curve later. Like, it's so flexible. It solves so many problems.
Yeah, it's really flexible. Like that's the important thing. And the twin spell, I think some people just look at it and they're like, "Oh, this isn't great." And that's the thing about twin spells. Like, they're really good because they're twin spell as well. It's like if you take a lot of mediocre to bad things and combine them and give you more of them, that becomes something really good. So, yeah, that's sort of it.
If you're watching the video, I tried to show the cards and it failed really hard.
It failed. This is what happens when we don't prepare. We just try to wing it, you know?
Yeah. But like, we're doing this as a normal Lightforge. It's not like a card by card review or anything.
No.
But okay. Do you want to talk about the next class?
What's the next class?
All right. I mean, you get to pick a class. You get to pick a class. You did Warlock. I did Druid.
Oh, I get to pick?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh no. Oh, are we talking? Oh god. All right. Should we talk about Arcane Amplifier? Or do you not want to talk about it?
Go for it.
All right.
Keep in mind, we already went on a huge rant about this in the last week.
We did. So, if you want to listen to my entire complaint on why I think Arcane Amplifier is one of the worst designed cards like ever, you can listen to the podcast from last week. Arcane Amplifier, I would just say, so once again, it is a 3-mana, 2/5 elemental. Your hero power deals 2 more damage. It's really good. It's really frustrating. It really puts the other player in a position of, do you have the tools to remove it soon, like really soon, or not? And if the answer is no, well, you're probably going to lose the game. As in, like,
high swing card. Like, it doesn't look like a high swing card, but that's what snowball cards are. They're high swing. You just have to have the board. Right? They're not high swing when you don't have the board. Like, something like Flame Strike is a high swing card, but it's high swing when you... Well, okay, Flame Strike's probably a bad one. Maybe like Twisting Nether. But it's high swing when you don't have the board. Arcane Amplifier is high swing when you do have the board. It's like a Mukla. Except it's also a 3-drop. Like, imagine if you had a King Mukla, but it's also a 3-drop. That's just like on curve. I don't know what you do with it.
Well, and not King Mukla, right?
Oh, like, yeah.
You're talking about Mukla's
champion.
Mukla's champion.
Similar kinds of Inspire cards that just, start rolling and get out of hand. Arcane Amplifier also has 5 health instead of Mookless Champion of 3.
Why does it have 5 health? I talked about this last week as well. So, okay. There's no reason for it to have 5 health. I will just say that. There's literally 0 reason. You could have made it a 2/4, and people would have been like, oh, wow, this is a really good card.
You could make it a 5/2.
A 5/2 would make it fair. I'd be like, ooh, I like this design. I actually like, this is like a decent design, right? I like or like a 4/2, right? It doesn't need to be, but it just didn't need those stats, first of all. Like, make it a 2/4 or a 4/2. 4/2 would have been great. 4/2 would have been fantastic.
4/2 is the good line for this card.
That's a great line for this card. But no, they made it a 2/5.
So it's rated a 165, which puts it at the level of Fireball, which is below Rolling Fireball, and below Arcane Breath in this meta, and below Flame Strike, but above everything else.
Yeah.
Literally everything else that Mage has.
That's basically it. Anyways. I want to get that out the way because, oh man,
yeah. I mean, this just goes to show you, right? Like, we talk about high swing cards, especially in the Descent of Dragons meta, and people tend to focus on things like either things that high swing card advantage, like that Druid Explorer, that's just like ridiculous amounts of Dragon Discovery and a huge giant taunt, or swings that are like board centric, like Twin Tyrant or whatever, right? But swings occur even like turn by turn, like. Arcane Amplifier does not swing the game on turn 5 when you deal 3 damage and summon a 2/5. That's kind of normal for a turn 5 move. But every turn after that, it just continues swinging the game. Anyway, this is the number 1 win rate card in HS Replay, which is expected because that's just... Anything that's high swing is going to have a higher win rate than how we rate it. Like, that's what it comes down to. Because good players don't like swings, so you don't need the Arcane Amplifier to win. And so, but if you're like matching up evenly matched players more or less, then the swing is going to be huge.
And well, Arcane Amplifier, it's not like it's bad for good players, but if you do have like someone like Dreads, he like really just needs the Arcane Amplifier. It's like, how do you win otherwise? So that's really the difference. It's like good players will appreciate Arcane Amplifier. It's certainly very powerful, but your average player just really like it's a bigger swing for them, right? It's a much bigger swing.
All right. Okay. So speaking of we've just gone in and talked about a bunch of cards that were basically like on HS Replay the highest win rates, and also on our tier list pretty much the highest scoring cards, if not the highest scoring cards. We're gonna go now to a class, which is why this is Priest is number 1 right now. It has 3 of these cards. It has 2 cards that are in like the top like 6 or 7, and then 1 card that is number 1. So let's go with the number 1 first. We also talked about this last week. We rated it a 160, which doesn't seem that high compared to the other cards, but it does make it the best Priest card outside of Holy Nova, Grave Runes, and Breath of the Infinite. So it's still really good. And that's the 6 mana 4/4 Aeon Reaver Battlecry, deal damage to a minion equal to its attack. Dragon. Not as good as whatever that rogue card is. The Slayer.
Vilespine?
Yeah, Vilespine, which is utterly ridiculous, but...
if we're comparing to one of the best cards like printed all the time.
But it's close. It's close. And that's a really good card.
Also, wait, why is it a dragon? Why did they make this a dragon?
For constructive purposes. Sure. Okay. And then we have Dark Prophecy, which is on HS Replay, a couple steps down from Aeon Reaver, but still like one of the top 5 cards by win rate. We rated basically the same thing. We rated a 158, a little bit below Aeon Reaver, and that's the one that's the 3 mana, discover a 2-cost minion, summon it, and give it a +3 health. So it's basically going to get you a 3/5 or a 2/6 on turn 3. It's really good. to do that. And late in the game, you may find something with a good ability or something like that, right? And finally, the other one, which is also basically a top 5 performing card in Priest, is Cleric of Scales, 1 mana, 1/1, Battlecry. If you're holding a dragon, discover a spell from your deck. So there's already a 2 mana 2/2 Fire Tree Witch Doctor that does that. Or sorry, 2 mana 2/2 Fire Tree Witch Doctor that does that. This is a 1 mana 1/1 that does that, and it is rated basically the same. It's like 2 points higher. Which means Fire True Witch Doctor is also an insane card now.
It is.
Oh, and if you didn't know, if you haven't like looked at the tier list in a while, we did an update for the current meta, and it moved dragons up a little bit in terms of the synergies for dragons, and Fire True Witch Doctor is now officially the best 2-drop in the game on average. Number 2 is Dragon Breeder. Flame Juggler is number 3. This is the meta we're in now, guys. Like dragons have fully taken over. Yeah. So that's your priest set. And if you're wondering why priests are so powerful right now, those are the insane cards that make priests so powerful. You have a control catch-up card, an Aeon Reaver that can also work if you're already on the board. Dark Prophecy is just an overstated freaking drop. And then Cleric of Scales is both a sort of curve card, at least curve filler card, and also gives you a spell.
Yep. Okay, let's talk about my favorite class and the important card that they got. So we're talking about Hunters, who are dead last in the rankings right now.
To be fair, they were dead last before Galakrond's Awakening came out.
That's true.
They are actually less dead last than they were last week before the expansion came out.
They're only at 45.5%, which really is not bad. Like, if we're looking at this meta, right, the delta between number 9 and number 1, it's like 8%. That's not that bad. Mm-hmm. That's really not that bad. But yeah, Hunter.
Like, you should be able to get it you should be able to get it to be within 5%, by the way. And Blizzard can do that. They just like haven't. And also some of it is probably because the win rates we're looking at are HS replay win rates and not average player win rates. And Blizzard's probably trying to get average player win rates to more even. And average player win rates are probably more even. But just saying, like, it's not like an impossible thing or anything like that. It's just how much you want to get it closer or care about it. So overall 9% on HS replay. It's okay.
It's okay.
Like, no one's terribly mad they're not doing micro adjusts.
But the big powerful card that Hunters got was Rotnest Drake. It's a rare dragon. Once again, everything's a dragon now. Everything's a powerful dragon. If it's a good card, it's a dragon. And if it's a dragon, it's a good card. Those are the two truths in life now.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 5 mana 6/5, so properly statted and offensively statted as well, which is something that you probably appreciate as a hunter. So it would already be good as is if it was just a properly statted card with a tribe so that it can activate other things and can benefit. But no, it also has Battle Cry. If you're holding a dragon, super duper easy these days. Destroy a random enemy minion. So it is a properly statted minion on top of a somewhat conditional, but not really conditional deadly shot. So really freaking good. Really, really freaking good.
It's not like the most insane thing ever. It's rated a 159, so it's like Aeon Reaver level, which like obviously is really, really good. I'm not trying to take away from it as being a super premium card. I think my line is 150, right? That like just should not exist. So these are all cards that are over the line. But there's like 10 hunter cards that are better than this on our tier list. Like Phase Stalker, Primordial Explorer, Diving Griffin, Stormhammer, Eagle Hornbow, Power Shot. Okay, not that many. That's it. But this is like Savannah Highmane levels, right? Like this is like Unleash the Hounds levels.
Only Savannah Highmane? Jeez,
man. Kindly Grandmother's around this level. Like that's just a curve card.
Yeah. So obviously it's really good. One of the problems is like there are two conditions that have to be met. We can joke about kind of you holding a dragon, but yeah, you still have to hold a dragon, number one.
And Primordial Explorers were like super nerfed in the micro adjusts. Yeah. You just don't see them anymore. So even though they are a common card, they're showing up like epic cards.
Yep. And also, it is still a random enemy minion. So it's like if you can layer these things on top of each other, this is what's really holding it back from like the super premium 180 score that you might think that it deserves.
Yeah.
So it's still really good, and by Adulta's sort of parameters, it still should not exist.
None of these should exist. We're just in the world now in which normal cards just have no place.
Nope. But if you're out there thinking, why isn't this a 200? That's the only reason why it's not a 200.
And nothing's a 200. Like, Primordial Explorer is the only over 200 card in Hunter. And Hunter has one of the higher ratings of the classes.
So, I'm sorry, guys. It's only as good as an Aeon Reaver.
Yeah. Like, you go to Druid and it caps out at 175, right? Warlock used to cap out at like 182, now 188. Like, it's just not. Okay. That's Hunter. This card, by the way, is a number 3 or number 4 on HS replay in win rate for Hunter class cards. So now we're gonna go to the class that I hate that I'm having so much success with this class because it means that the meta's crap when it comes to skill, which is true. It's what we've been saying ever since Galakron, ever since Descent of Dragons came out. But ever since the micro adjusts, most of my Shaman runs have gone 12 wins. I've had 3, and 2 of them have got 12 wins. This one should be coming up on YouTube, hopefully in the next week or weekend. And it is all thanks to this one card, which is currently the number 1 card in Shaman by HS replay win rates. It is Eye of the Storm. This also shows you how slow the meta is, because this card should not be that good. We only rated it at 146. It's a common card, 10 mana, summon 3, 5/6 elementals with taunt, overload 3. It has a crap ton of stats. They're all taunt stats. It's really hard to get through this. You're gonna have to play the board for a bit. What Eye of the Storm solves for Shaman, and I had, did I have 2 of these? No, I had 1 of these and 1 Dragon Queen Alexstrasza in my deck.
Okay.
Well, okay. This card did way more than Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, by the way, and I had no duplicates. I specifically had no duplicates for it, and this card was more of a game winner than Dragon Queen Alexstrasza because we drew it more often than Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, and that's the difference between a good card and a great card. You drawing it more often. So yeah, Eye of the Storm. Getting to turn 10 and not dying is not as much of a feat anymore as it should be. And I say anymore as in compared to earlier metas that were more aggressive. Ever since Descent of Dragons came out and everybody got like more aggressive, getting to turn 10 was like a little bit of a challenge. But now, like, you see mind controls everywhere now, right? Ever since the
mind control is the most common card in Priest by HS replay. This is disgusting. It actually is disgusting. It shows exactly what it. Okay, here's the thing. If Priests were like number 7 by win rate and their number 1 card was mind control, that doesn't matter. That doesn't, like, no one cares about that. But the fact that they're number 1 in win rate and their number 1 most common card is mind control, it just screams the meta is messed up.
I mean,
this is not good.
And the fact that Eye of the Storm is doing so well is further proof of that, right? The meta is generally slower than it should be, because you can punish people by going faster pretty consistently.
Yikes, man.
And people just aren't doing it. But anyway, so you'll get to turn 10 a good amount of times. It's also Shaman. It's easier to get to turn 10 as Shaman than other classes because people keep killing your totems. Even if you, like, you know, screw up, don't carve out a turn or whatever, you're still getting, like, really good heal for that turn. So in the end, the totem may not be as good for defense as, like, a warrior or priest hero power. But in terms of getting to turn 10, not like, you know, surviving past it by, like, healing yourself out of lethal range, but like just getting to turn 10, totems are actually better.
In the early and mid game, every totem is a taunt totem.
Yeah, and it's taking at least 2 damage minimum.
Yeah, exactly. So you can think of the priest heal and the warrior's hero power as, oh, you actually get to heal too. Shaman, it's like on average you're healing like a little bit more than 3.
Yeah, somewhere between 3 and 4.
Yeah. So if you think of it that way, that's a really good defensive tool for you. Because most of the people will clear your totems for good reason. Like there are some really heavy punishes for not doing it. So I completely agree. And I do it as well. Like, well, unless I'm playing my hunters. But yeah, totems are very, very scary, no matter which totem you have out there. So
so if your priests are getting to turn 10 quite frequently, your shamans are definitely getting to turn 10 quite frequently.
Yeah.
And Eye of the Storm lets you do like all the things once you get to turn 10. The Overload 3 doesn't matter that much because you're just trying to like stabilize at that point, hopefully. But the bigger part of Eye of the Storm in this Shaman's piece is that it is a very large card advantage card. Shamans cannot draw cards. They never could draw cards. Not really. Actually, in this meta, the one card that they've ever gotten that allows them to actually draw cards is Ancestral Knowledge. It's not a great card. We rated a 91. It's 2 mana with Overload 2 for an Arcane Intellect. But hey, it's Shaman. They can't draw cards otherwise. And that's in the meta. You also have Reign of Toads in this meta, which is a ridiculous like taunt that starts on turn 6. Doesn't do much, but like taunt up a lot, but it taunts up a lot. We rated a 125. It's a pretty damn good card. And so you get to chain a lot of things into this Eye of the Storm. And Eye of the Storm solves your card advantage problem by giving you basically 3 to 4 cards in one card. Like, this is about as much card advantage, if not more so, than a Mind Control. Like, I mean, it costs 3 more mana than a Mind Control, but it does the job that Shamans have been sorely needing, have always sorely needed. So definitely take at least one of these in your deck. I would say the first one, I would probably prioritize it, assuming you're not going super aggressive. I would probably prioritize it over everything else in the deck right now for this meta, just based on what you'll face. Like, we only rated a 146, but I would definitely take it over a Hex, over a Squall Hunter, over a Earth Elemental or a Fire Element. Oh, it's rated higher than a Fire Elemental. I may not take it over your first Bloodlust, depending on how your deck goes. If your deck is like curving out decently, Bloodlust is still better. It ends the game for a win. Eye of the Storm is like, they could still fight you on the board, right? I definitely wouldn't take it over the first Storm's Wrath, which just does Bloodlust but better. And I may or may not take it over the first Lightning Breath, Lightning Storm, or Elemental Destruction. Again, depending on how your deck is shaping up. It's very, like, dependent, right? Like, do you need the clears to stay in the game and get that card advantage and, like, not die? Or can you afford to take an Eye of the Storm? But the first Eye of the Storm is really good.
Cool. Did we have any more cards we want to talk about?
Well, those are the top cards. They're certainly not all the cards. If you look at what classes have we talked about, I'll just go over them really, really quick. Sure. Paladin we haven't talked about because they probably have the worst cards along with Rogue that have been entered in. People are going crazy over Shotbot, but it's a 144. It's a shielded minibot. We've seen it before. It's like the 10th best Paladin card by HS Replay right now, which by the standards of this set is not all that great. Air Raid, we rate 2 points behind it. It's a twin spell. Summon 2/1/1 Silverhand Recruits with Taunt, which means that 4 mana, you can summon 4 of them if you need to. Sort of on curve. A lot of taunts, but you know, I mean, we're shrugging over 140 rated cards. They're still really good. They're better than all the neutrals outside of your Twin Tyrant levels. But
it's all relative, right? Yeah. It's like, you know, if you remember years ago, Shielded Minibot was like, oh my god, it was like nightmare.
It's like, why would you ever print this? It's so silly. Now it's like, well, I guess it's not as good as the other premiums they're printing.
Right. It's like, okay, cool. It's no Twisted Knowledge. It's like, it's no, you know, it's no Aeon Reaver.
Yeah.
So sure, I guess that's fine. Which it's not fine. It's just finer, I guess. All right.
Rogues get even the shorter end of the stick. Their best card's only a 122, which is pathetic by this set standards. It's a Sky Vatir, 2 mana, 1/3 stealth, death rattle, draw a card. Rogues just don't really need 2-drops, so it's not getting as much for a 2-drop as it otherwise would. You just want a dagger on 2. This is less tempo than a dagger, so you're just playing it later on. It doesn't do all that much, and they don't have any other cards that are good. So this is still like even Sky Vatir is like I think the top 12 or at least top 15 card in Rogues.
It's good.
So it's not like it's not bad. It's better than a Yeti, but just not keeping up, right?
Yeah.
Warrior is the other class that actually got good cards. It has Bomb Wrangler, which is a top 4 or 5 card by HS replay standards right now. 3 mana, 2/3. Whenever this minion takes damage, summon a 1/1 Boombot. I've lost to it on turn 3, like just right there. Right, you have a Croc or something. They play a Bomb Wrangler. You're done. There's too many Boombots on the board. You're not going to be able to, like, you have to hope they all hit face. Like, I think I was playing a class that didn't have a ping too. Like, it was just bad. And that's what could happen. And even late in the game, it's just more tempo, and you may want the face damage too late in the game. What else? Boom Squad is another really good card. This one is top 10, 12 cards for Warrior. 1 mana, discover a lackey, mech, or dragon. So you always get a lackey, a mech, and a dragon. The mechs suck, the dragons are kind of hit or miss, but if you hit, it's really good, and the lackeys are your consistent backup option. Like, at the very least, you're going to get a lackey. And all the lackeys are at least pretty decent, because they've already banked the mana. Right? Remember, lackeys are 1 mana, 1/1s, that then do something that would normally cost you 2 mana. Or at least 1 mana. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's a 120. Like, it's good for what it is, but it's still not, like... It's not super premium. And then we also have Risky Skipper at a 120. HS Replay, I don't know where it is on HS Replay. I don't think it's as high as we've put it, but this is also like a super pro card. I mean, it's doing really well on HS Replay. It's a 58% win rate. But I don't know, like, what that is for Warrior. Let me do this right now. Warrior, class cards only. It is... Oh, never mind. Hold on. It's actually a top 10 card as well.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Sorry. It's number 14. It's right below Boom Squad. What do you know? HS Replay matching up exactly with our ratings. Risky Skipper's a 120 as well. It's basically the same as Boom Squad in our ratings, and also in HS Replay's stats. So it is actually doing well. I think I was looking at an earlier version of it where it wasn't doing as well. But right now, from all the data that they have, pretty similar. Risky Skipper's a 1 mana, 1/3. After you play a minion, deal 1 damage to all minions. It's kind of a pro card because, like, if you need to play it on turn 1, you play it on turn 1, right? But if you're not playing on turn 1, you got to figure out when to play it, how to play it, when to trade it in to kill it off, when to play more minions, like, even though it's hurting you, and when to, like, just, like, hold back and not play minions because it would hurt you. It's a lot of decision making if you don't play it on turn 1. But overall, it's very good. You want those kinds of choices, especially in Warrior, when it's very hard to generally deal damage outside of your weapons.
Yep. Definitely.
Cool. That's all the meta impactful cards from Galakrond's Awakening. Every last one of them.
So, not that many cards, 35 cards, but a lot of important, impactful, meta shifting cards. It makes sense. If they're going to release a small batch of cards, better make it count, better make it worth it.
Yup. Yeah. So enjoy the meta. It's not that bad. I think people may like it more than the previous meta. It's certainly more diverse because whatever else is happening, you've at least diluted down the Descent of Dragons cards a bit with these new cards. So if you're like, oh, some of these new cards sound really problematic, is the meta going to be terrible? Well, keep in mind, it's diluting a set that is really, really, really terrible. like with neutral cards that are more terrible than these cards. So you see just the fewer Twin Tyrants you see in the meta and stuff like that, right? I think makes it so that these cards aren't as bad as they would be otherwise. So yeah, like I don't think the meta is any worse for the wear compared to what it was a week ago. And it's more diverse now. So that's all. Those are all good things. Like overall, I think the meta improved by a tiny, tiny bit over where it was last week. And it was pretty decent last week after they did the micro adjust. And then took out Poacher.
Yep. So that's the meta. It's a priest meta. Your enjoyment will differ based on what you like.
There's not that many priests. Like, there's more than your normal amount of priests. But it's just, you still have to get people to play priests. And they just don't do that the way they would with a paladin or mage.
I know.
But yeah, so this meta is going to last for the meta is going to last for 2 more weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think a rotation is coming. So enjoy it while it's here. And we'll see what happens when the rotation happens. I will bet you anything the meta's worse when the rotation happens. Because they're going to put the entire like standard sets in. And it's going to be like just ridiculousness.
Yep.
All right. Cool. We got a question from the GOAT.
So it's not really a question from the GOAT. I wanted to talk about something. And I thought it would be nice to end on something that's not exactly Hearthstone related, but I think we can all take a little bit away from. So this week, we're recording this on Sunday, and as you guys probably heard by now, there was a helicopter crash this morning on the West Coast. 5 people passed away. Among 2 of the people, one was Kobe Bryant, along with his 13-year-old daughter. They were on their way to a basketball game. And the reason I bring this up, so number one, personally, it affects me because if you know some stuff about me, you probably know I'm an NBA fan. And for the last 20 years, Kobe Bryant has been one of the faces of the NBA. You either love him or you love to hate him. And so this personally affected me a lot. But I think that what really made me think when I learned about this news today was, and why a lot of people were impacted by this was just because if you learn anything from Kobe's legacy at all, it's that if you do anything at all, like if you do anything at all, make sure that you enjoy what you do and make sure that you do it well. And I think that you got that out of all of his interviews, and you got that every time he played and stepped onto the court as well. And I think that for anything in life, that's very applicable and that's very noble. And second of all, I think when we hear news like this, it's always important to take stock of where we are. And if you are listening to this or watching this on Twitch, that means you have just spent more than an hour of the free time that you do have to try to get better and have fun at a game that you have additional free time to play, made by 2 guys that have way too much free time to make all this stuff. So in many ways, all of us are very, very, very lucky. And as we embark on the new year and the new decade, I think it's important, past the complaining about Twin Tyrant, past the complaints about whatever may be going on with your life. I think it's always important to take a step back and just appreciate how lucky we all are for the many things that are going well in our lives. So that's it. It's a little bit of perspective for a children's card game, but I think it's something that's very important that we should all keep in mind. Thank you, guys.
Yep. Well said. Question from the GOAT is brought to you by our patrons. Just a shout out to our top patrons of the new year: 4P, Antimatter, Brand New, Changyin, Joshua C, Eric L, RV Night Train, and Yingfeng. Yinfeng. I'm like, why am I pronouncing this wrong? I know Chinese, actually. Thank you guys so much for supporting the goat and feeding the goat. This would not be possible without you. And until next time, this is Adwicta.
This is Burps. See you next week.